Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the BitcoinMeister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin and Beyond. Oh, yeah, we got some libertarian subjects to talk about today. All right. Today is August the 16th, 2023. Long-term thinking. Bitcoin always returns to its all-time high. This is where the big boys play. Best guest in the freaking space. Oh, I've got a special one for you today. Hello, my elite friends. We are in the golden age. Having hype is coming soon. In motion. Value your wealth in Bitcoin. Most people are irrational most of the time. Remember, do not pedestal the people that are out there. Okay, you could change your behavior. Compete, don't complain. I got Bitcoin conviction. Elite friends, we got a really special show here. Retweet it. Dr. Vance Ginn is making his debut on the This Week in Bitcoin show. All of his information is linked to below. All of Andy's information is linked. Yeah, Andy Hoffman is back again. And oh my God, 3 times in a row, we got Ulrich here. He is linked to below. Click on them right now. Follow all of them on Twitter right this second. They got a lot to say. Now, there's a couple of you that don't know who Dr. Vance Ginn is because you are in this Bitcoin bubble, okay? Everything you hear about Bitcoin is either in the crypto land, the Bitcoin land, whatever. You got to expand your mind. So I got a guy in here. He's going to tell you things and maybe you never heard about Bitcoin before. Maybe he's going to say some nice things about gold. I'm not exactly sure. But this dude has been around the block. I have been paying attention to him. And I really like I love his show, his YouTube show. He's got people talking about free banking. I mean, all sorts of interesting things. But we're going to start with him. He's going to talk about himself a little bit. But I want to read to you what the Texas Observer said about him on May the 30th, 2019. Top economist for Texas's most influential policy shop is headed to the Trump administration. Vance Ginn, who orchestrated Texas Public Policy Foundation's radically right-wing economic agenda, is the latest staffer from the influential think tank to work for the president. As director of TPPF's Center for Economic Prosperity, Ginn was the voice for the think tank's radically right-wing economic agenda. He advocated for harsh spending restraints and against regulation for fossil fuel industries. Oh my, yes. He has called for the federal minimum wage, a terrible policy. I agree, and likens it to artificial pricing by government decree, which it is. In Ginn's ideal world, both state and federal governments would abolish property and business taxes. Oh my Lord, please let it happen. And replace them with a consumption. I wouldn't replace it with anything. Anyway, they were scaring everyone about the Dr. Vance Ginn here, that he was going to join the evil Trump administration and take away minimum wage and all these things that are supposedly radical. So you served a year in the Trump administration. Welcome to the show.
Adam, it's a pleasure with you. I mean, I guess I am a radical, so let's keep it going.
Yeah.
In the right place.
I mean, what was your time like that year in the Trump administration?
It was a wild year, Adam. I mean, I went there June 2019, basically left in June 2020. Actually, it was May of 2020, and helped write the president's last budget. Went through all these different areas. So basically, I was the chief economist for the Office of Management and Budget. So I was in the Eisenhower Executive Office, building right next to the White House. I could go in the West Wing anytime and do that sort of thing. My main job was to help come up with the economic assumptions that go in the president's budget to determine the next 10-year window of what GDP was going to be, interest rates, inflation. Like, I had a whole team that would look at this sort of thing. And then the second part of that year, though, was when COVID hit. And then I found myself in the Situation Room. And as someone who is a first-generation college student, went on to get a PhD in economics, I went to homeschool from 7th grade through 12th grade. Being in the Situation Room in the White House was an extraordinary thing. And unfortunately, it was during a a time where I'd rather not have been there, and talking about what's this going to do to the economy, the shutdowns and everything. And I was basically like, look, this is going to be terrible. We can't shut things down. The government should not be in that sort of a role. And so shortly thereafter, I moved back to Texas, where I grew up and everything, and back to some sense of freedom compared to what was happening up there.
So did you leave because of the policies? Did you start to think this is getting ridiculous, or is that the reason, or was it other reasons? Or
yeah, there was part of that. I definitely with the policy part of it, and then also my family lived in Texas, and so we wanted to get back to what everybody was doing here. This is where we're from, near Austin. I grew up in Houston, but now we're in Round Rock. I try not to claim the People's Republic of Austin. They have a lot of bad policies that are going on there, but there's a lot of good things in Austin too. But yeah, it was a combination though, Adam, of like the policy direction, you just feeling frustrated about the direction of where things were going, but also wanting to get back home to family.
Now, your basic premise of what you talk about at the think tank now, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, at the state level, we need to cut spending at the budget. This is a simple thing, and the federal people can learn from us. Yeah. But it's obviously easier to do it at a local level. Did you get frustrated at being in the center, being at the federal level? And did you compromise a little bit by being at the federal level? Do you like being at the state level a little bit more? Do you believe in that decentralization aspect of true federalism?
Yeah, I think federalism is important. We need this laboratory of competition to see what works and what doesn't work. And, that's why I started my own thing. I have Ginn Economic Consulting now that I started last October. It left the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which I've been there off and on for 10 years. Now I work with other think tanks like the Pelican Institute in Louisiana, Americans for Tax Reform in D.C., and several others that are out there. Texas Fiscal Responsibility is another one, and really focus in on spending restraint. And we need spending limits. We need to lower taxes as much as possible. But look, government spending is the ultimate burden of government. And because if you don't spend it, you don't need to tax it. And if you don't spend it, you can't regulate it. We can't have a bureaucracy and everything else. And so we really got to focus in on government spending. So when I was at the federal level, we were trying to find cuts. We found $4.6 trillion in cuts over a decade. Now, that's compared with baseline growth, so not actual cuts like I would like and probably we would like for the overall budget. But at least we were trying to rein in government spending. And then, of course, as we know, is what happened after COVID is all that went out the window. I mean, not that Congress is going to listen to the president's budget anyway, but because, their incentives are such to keep giving handouts, right? Increase government spending, and at the same time cut taxes. I'm not a supply side economist either that says that tax cuts just pay for themselves. You've really got to have spending restraint at the end of the day as well. There will be growth, right, from the incentives that change when you cut taxes, but you've really got to have government spending restraint at the same time. So no, I did find it frustrating. I think it is easier to do at the state and local level, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there as well. And ultimately, when we're looking at $33 trillion in national debt, $1 trillion a year just on net interest payments on the debt alone, $2 trillion a year, and for the foreseeable future in deficits, about half of that is just coming from net interest payments. This is unsustainable. It's insolvency, and it's one of the reasons why I think we need to be looking at things like Bitcoin and other sort of cryptos that are out there. So I think all this starts to come together.
Not other cryptos.
Okay.
Bitcoin.
Okay. All right.
Here we go.
And Vance, and it's great that you're here with us now, and that you're talking about Bitcoin. And I'm hoping you're investing everything you got in it personally, because when you were in that job, I think you knew as much as philosophically all these things that you are saying are correct, that we are so far into this Ponzi scheme that there is nothing that could be done to slow down spending in any way. Doesn't matter who's president.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one reason why I've been in favor of putting in spending limits, like something that's a rule, the restraint, fiscal rule. And even then, I think there's some problems that they're going to find ways around it, right? As you know, right? But we need to find some way. This is what most of the states do. 37 states have a spending limit. Why shouldn't the federal government should have it as well, especially when they don't have a balanced budget amendment? And I'm not a huge fan of balanced budgets because I don't think we should be raising taxes. That actually is counter to balancing a budget because then you slow the economy and everything else. We've really got to focus in on government spending, and that's led by a lot of our fiat currency system that we have today, unfortunately.
Well, now you've seen it at the federal level go completely get out of control with the virus spending. I mean, no one could have dreamed of that. But at the Texas level, you've seen some restraint and stuff. Do you think we're going, especially if this administration sticks around for the next, after 2024, Do you see at the state level some of these states just going their own way? Not secession, but financial nullification, maybe just ignoring the federal government with certain policies.
Yeah, I think there could be some of that going on, especially when you think about government spending and how much it's growing for things like Medicaid and other safety net programs. I mean, it's a massive cost that I think that there needs to be more flexibility of what states can do to counter some of those costs, and the connection and the dependency on taxpayers from across the country that's funded through by the federal government. I mean, we've got to make sure that, there's no free lunch. There's somebody's paying those taxes, and it's taxpayers from the productive private sector. And in order to make sure that we have that connection, we've got to get spending under control. And so the states really have to take their authority to do what they need to do best. Texas, for example, has done a better job than many other states in restraining spending. If you look at something like population growth plus inflation, which is one metric, I think that's probably the maximum that it should be. I'd love for it to see being cut, spending being cut entirely. But Texas has done a pretty good job of staying within that sort of metric over time, kind of like Colorado's taxpayer bill of rights, and a couple of other states as well. But most states have not. When you think about places like California, Colorado, I know, Andy, you said you're in Colorado. I mean, they've actually done a pretty good job. We could always be doing better, but they've done a pretty good job. And you got most of the other states up in the Northeast that have not done a good job spending. And so this brings about a good opportunity for people to move with their feet, right? And we've seen that. We've seen the competition where places like California and New York, where are they moving? They're moving to places like Texas and Florida and Tennessee, which happen to not have a personal income tax, which I think is really important. Those are 3 of the 7 states in the country that don't have a personal income tax, which I think is really important there.
Now, this federalism aspect that we're touching on here briefly, I just want to say to people, this is the ultimate protection against a President Elizabeth Warren for Bitcoin. That in the end of the day, Wyoming hopefully will have the cojones to say, no, we're not going to, criminalize Bitcoin, which you want to do. And it is still very possible. So I'm very encouraged in any state when I see guys like Dr. Vance Ginn, working on a state level, doing involved in economic policies that I very much support, that are not going with the flow of what the mainstream federal lovers are saying. Now, before the panel members are going to have lots of questions here. And I encourage everybody in the super chat to do a super chat to ask questions, because we got a unique guy who's seen the inside of things over there. And remember, link to below is the Tonebase Las Vegas event, December code Meister 8. You get a discount. Just read the notes section, people. But Dr. Vance Ginn, I got to say, did you, when you were in the White House, when you worked for the federal government, what was there any Bitcoin talk? I mean, the thing is, President Trump, basically some of the things that he said that dealt with the money were very.
We just learned that Trump has 300 million of Ethereum. Not 300. How much is it? 300,000.
He's got
3 million.
He's got some cryptocurrency. But my point is, he said that the president said, he basically implied that the dollar, be loyal to the dollar. If you're a patriot, you like the dollar, and that he didn't like cryptocurrency. Did you ever hear any cryptocurrency talk when you're in there?
Not really. I was thinking back as you were asking that, and there really wasn't that much discussion of it at the time, unfortunately.
Of course. I wouldn't think so. I just thought he spoke off the cuff right there. Andy, you're going to say something. Sorry.
No. I mean, it's just funny that Trump. They just said that he has all this Ethereum. So obviously, that people say one thing and they do other things. And we all know that everyone knows about it now. It's just a matter of how fast people start to talk about it politically. And there's you're going to talk about the guy in Argentina when we have RFK Jr. and there's lots of people out there talking about it. Just a matter of time before everyone does.
Yeah, exactly. But with Trump and the Ethereum that they found out he owns, he created a free whatchamacallit, a Trump token or whatever it was. What do you call it? He
had an NFT.
Yeah, an NFT. It was a Trump NFT, and so I don't even know how he got away with selling them and everything. I mean, I believe personally anyone should be able to print their own money. It's free banking, and there shouldn't be all these banking restrictions. And again, Vance Ginn, Dr. Vance, you had on your show a really good guest who just spoke about that. I
yeah, Larry White, Dr. Larry White. We talked a lot about free banking and his new book, Better Money, which he's I don't know. I guess he's kind of not a critic, but maybe someone who's cautious about Bitcoin and other things. So it was a good discussion that we had on the Let People Prosper show just a couple months ago.
Yes. So that show actually was like the fire. I was like, I got to get Dr. Vance Ginn on this show because he was not against Bitcoin,
right?
But he was just like, let people, if people want gold, if people want Bitcoin, let them do what they're going to do. Now he actually said some good things about Bitcoin, and then he said one bad thing or something like that. So what is your take on Bitcoin then?
Yeah, look, I think that we need more competition in the market, just like we were talking about federalism between the federal government and the states, and that sort of competition that's out there. I think the dollar needs competition, and I think that is an important part of Bitcoin to be competition. I think whenever you think about a medium of exchange, I don't know that it's quite there yet. It's still got a ways to go. But there are some things about the dollar which have a lot of problems. A lot of countries are moving off of it as a global reserve currency that it has been for so long. As they're selling off those dollars, they're selling off the treasury securities, and that's going to create other problems throughout our economy. And so you're going to need something else for people to go into, to look at, to use for a lot of their transactions. And so whenever you think about, like I was mentioning earlier, with the deficits continuing to soar from overspending by Congress, from the net interest on the debt, we're going to have some major problems where I think the Fed is going to be pushed or even forced to continue to manipulate the economy and print money, which is going to debase, it's going to depreciate the dollar over time and create other problems throughout our economy. And so people need something else that they can go to. And with the blockchain technology with Bitcoin, I think that's huge. And I think that there are so many things that are associated with that allows for people to have more of their private property, which I'm a free market capitalist, right? Like I'm about free markets, and capitalism is based a lot on private property, and the essential parts of what Bitcoin can provide really provides more of that privacy, more of those private property rights in general that I think are essential. I'm not sold yet that it will be the reserve currency or that it will take over the dollar. But I'm glad to have a conversation about it to see what options should be, because I do think the dollar it has a lot of problems moving forward.
Yeah, well, you just brought up a lot of points, things that I wanted to talk about today.
Good.
I want to say that I believe in separation of money and state. Obviously, yes. Sir Ulrich here, he's got he'll talk about, that's a big thing of his, Declaration of Financial Independence. It's linked to below, by the way, people. But it is funny that the government thinks, especially Elizabeth Warren, thinks that the United States should have a monopoly on money. The dollar, the people can't make any choice, monopoly on money. But Google, they're going to say, has got a monopoly on.
Yeah.
When it doesn't have a real monopoly.
No. And Adam, I should just mention, like, I'm for a free banking system. Kind of when we were talking with Larry White that time on the Let People Prosper show, I'm for a free banking system where banks can issue their own currency and everything. And I think Bitcoin would be a part of that process. And there's, like, you're right. If they're talking about monopolies, the government's the biggest monopoly. They're coming through antitrust and trying to break up these companies and tech firms and everything else. But look, if consumers have sovereignty in the marketplace, we need to give them more power instead of giving it more to government.
I got to interject real quick. I got to ask this question before we get too far. So Vance, you were talking about how California, the Northeast, they handle their budget in a different way versus, say, a Texas or maybe some states in the Midwest. Just from if you could summarize the philosophy of what you think the New England states think money is and how it should be used. We all understand that money is a tool.
Yeah.
But I guess what I say is we call it store value, medium of exchange, unit of account. Would there be an extra feature that they think, and we're talking about people at the state level, at the authority level, that they think money is or should be in its role in society?
No, that's a good question, Ulrich. I think whenever you drill into it, I don't know. So if you look at it, reminds me of some of the things that you were talking there about, like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, the MMT, modern monetary theory, right? Where in their views, money doesn't really matter too much. It's really about getting the outcomes that they want. And then they go back from there to come up with their philosophy or their theories of how they get to that point. And so I don't know that they have a great value of money or really understand how much of it is an exchange that it is. And whenever you take a step back, this is what I talk quite a bit about, is the amount of trust that it takes with that money. Because each one of those exchanges that takes place in the marketplace, which are just institutions, it brings about a lot of trust. And that, to me, is really a big part of what money is in this medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value. I think the medium exchange is the number one thing. I come more from the Austrian School of Economics. And so I really think that the medium exchange is the key part of what takes place there. And when I think about some of your question, though, about the Northeast or some of these MMTers and others, I don't think they put a lot of value to money. It's more about getting their policy prescriptions in place for nationalized healthcare, for free college education, and then however they can get to that point from A to B, they're willing to do it without really caring much about money. But I don't know; others may have a different viewpoint there.
I think they see government money as a way of political control, a way to get political power.
Yeah,
I was looking for that word, and that's what what's his name? Forget his name. Andreas Antonopoulos, old school Bitcoiner. He was speaking to a group of people maybe 6 months ago, and he added that fourth constraint, or that fourth mode, if you will, where it's store value, medium exchange, unit of account, but a form of control. And I see that we don't talk about that enough, because when people see a dollar, they don't see how can a piece of paper control me. I'm holding, I'm bigger than it. I give it to someone, they give me a candy bar. But the greater scope of what economics is, that we aren't taught in our public school education. We aren't even given an inkling of it until maybe the end of senior year, or if you choose an elective in college. But these are the types of base level principles that we people, the regular people, should need to know how the world works. And the government's not going to tell you that. The elites that run the education system, they're not going to tell you that, because it will infringe upon their monopoly of this hidden knowledge, if you will, where they're using the fiat currency system to dictate how people live their lives. And that's why Bitcoin, not in control of any one institution, truly decentralized, can take that form of control out of money entirely.
Well, basically, inflation financially enslaves the masses. That's the power tool right there. It gives them they become dependent. Inflation, your MMT is going to make more and more of the masses dependent on daddy government, and that's part of the way some of those Northeastern Yankees see it, I think. And
permission based. So if you could take someone off the system, like how they took Russia off the what is it called? I forgot the term. Swift. They get to say, hey, you're a bad actor, you're out of the system. But Bitcoin, Bitcoin, they call it, Bitcoin is money for your enemies. And so you have to, no matter what, everyone has access to the Bitcoin network. And there's something important about that that brings about freedom to all participants, and let the free market decide what is good for the one another's, rather than a select few. And that's very important, because the select few, they have also a limited knowledge of what is the right decision for the world. Why do we rely on 20, 40, 60 people in the Federal Reserve to determine the value of the dollar for the next 6 weeks? It makes no sense.
Well, the thing is, though, what you've just described is that if a country were to adopt Bitcoin as its currency, they would give up all financial power over their people, and these people are power hungry. So, who knows how far some of these Bitcoin fans that are in office are going to take it. It would be great if they took it all the way. I never see them taking it all the way, but I do want to get to something that Dr. Ginn touched on real quick, and it reminds me of something that Andy actually DM'd me the other day. The imminent massive financial currency crisis that is racing toward us. Andy, expand upon that. What do you think is the imminent financial currency crisis that is racing toward us?
Right. And then, first I'll just go back to what we were saying. Last week on the show, when you brought up CBDCs, we were talking about, government trying to take power. And I said that it would never happen because this is just more Atlas Shrugged stuff. Every fiat currency regime fails. It always has. And if this is, this is clearly the end of this one, because now the debt and inflation is spiraling out of control, and people are shunning the dollar. And now we all actually have an alternative for the first time. It's usually things crash and then another horrible regime appears, but now we have Bitcoin, and that's where everyone's going to go this time. And I've been talking about this forever, so have many of us, but it's quite obvious now that the government has no more bullets left. If they tried this time around, when they try the QE and lowering rates, it's going to be disastrous, because it's going to this time cause people to sell bonds, not buy them. And we know what the end result is. It's just a matter of time. And this is not a long period of time, because the interest rates at this level are literally destroying the world. And there's nothing they can do about it except prescribe a new round of QE, which again, people will not take well to.
Well, we can have I think there will be financial issues. I mean, we're going through inflation all over the world right now. And it will be worse in some countries than other countries. Some countries, it's just, we're going to talk about Argentina, hyperinflation. It's something that happens every 10 years. I mean, my question is, if 80% of the country is asleep, then does inflation politically matter? If 80% of the country thinks 2 + 2 = 5, because the government says 2 + 2 = 5, if the government says there's no inflation, be happy, and a lot of the country believes that, then is there a crisis? What's really going? I mean,
people are getting destroyed now, Adam. I mean, you talk about a bubble that we're in. You're living the simplest of life and not really seeing anybody. You're cloistered in your rooms and your conferences. I mean, I know people who are getting destroyed out there. I mean, these interest rates are killing people. Inflation is killing people, and it's going to keep going. There's nothing that's going to stop it. And we were talking about yesterday, currencies in other countries. It is astounding how far down some of these other currencies are. I mean, people are being devastated, and there's no turning back. I mean, the Fed can't just say we're gonna print money again and lower rates. They can't do that anymore.
That's where we differ.
Yeah.
I think the CBDC. I think they'll be able to do all sorts of fun things.
Well, we've talked about that. They don't have.
Yeah. That's right. That's why we got
money, and they have no money. So
that's right, Doctor. So, Dr. Ginn, your take on this.
I think y'all bring up a lot of good points there, and I'm really concerned about the economy. I mean, from my view, I really think that we went into a recession in March of 2022. If you look at gross domestic output, the average of real gross domestic product and gross domestic income, it's been declining for 3 out of the last 5 quarters. If you look at a lot of other measures that are out there, we've seen declines. If you look at the jobs reports, yes, it seems like things are good, but when you look under the hood, there's declines. They're revising a lot of those numbers because their seasonal adjustments are all off from what happened during the pandemic, and they're using those last couple of years of averages to do their seasonal adjustments. And so I think there's going to be a lot of revisions downward in the months ahead because of the problems that are going on. And when you look at a lot of those data, a lot of them are part-time jobs, and it's a lot of people who have got 2 jobs. So if you take away those, there are very few that are getting full-time jobs in this environment, and it's unfortunate. And so what that does is that then puts pressure on what the Federal Reserve is doing whenever they're going to be pausing. And I think that there's still a lot of inflationary pressures that are out there underneath. I mean, I know CPI inflation says 3.2%, but if you look at core, exclude food and energy, you're at closer to 5%. Oil, food, and energy are starting to go back up. Oil prices back up to $85. Gas prices are starting to go up as well. So we're going to see those headline numbers go up. Even the PCE, the personal consumption expenditures that the Federal Reserve really likes to look at, still also is hot. I mean, these are hot things that are going on. And yes, the interest rate, the federal funds rate, is up from 0% to 5.5%. And I think it'll probably be 6% by the end of the year. What I am really concerned about, though, is the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve. The interest rates are one indicator, but remember, they target the interest rate. They don't necessarily control them through their monetary open market operations. You've got to look at their balance sheet. Their balance sheet went from $4 trillion to it went to $9 trillion. Now it's back down a little bit to $8.3 trillion. That's more than double from what it was right before the pandemic at $4 trillion. And all the money that they've got out there is in mortgage-backed securities, treasury securities, some agency debt, and financial institutions. So what they're doing are manipulating the economy, keeping interest rates lower than they otherwise would be, which is making things look better on the surface. This is the artificial, malinvestments that are happening across the economy and the boom and bust cycles that happen. And so I think when you think about this structure that's on a weak system right now, is going to bust substantially. I think we're already in that process and have been for a while. That creates pressure for us not to be the global reserve currency in the world anymore for the dollar, which is one reason why China, India, other countries are starting to sell it off. And that leaves the opportunity for other currencies like Bitcoin and others to really come in and fill that void.
Well, again,
when you say Bitcoin and others, what others?
Yeah.
What others?
Well, that's a good question. I just try to leave it open from a free market perspective of what other ones will come up. Yeah.
It's let the market decide. Well, this is the thing here. Are people going to choose the BRICS over the dollar?
No.
I mean, no, I know they're not.
Going to choose Europe either.
Strongly. I mean.
And that's the thing, Adam. You and I were talking about this a little bit. Like, all the other ones are weak too. Are they going to use the Chinese yuan? No. Are they going to use the euro? No. Like, where else are you going to go at this point? And so it's just like it's the strongest one out of all the weak ones that are out there.
Bitcoin. So there are no others.
You gave that by official definitions. If you're in a think tank or whatever. People will say, look, we're in a recession. Yeah, we're in a recession. Yeah, they're going to redo all the numbers. It's all lie. Of course, we're in a recession. But on the political level, which is, I think, in the end of the day, kind of all that matters, is that if the people are told it's the new 2 + 2 = 5, is there is no recession. And they keep repeating it. And they believe it because they get meaning through living vicariously through this government soap opera situation. So I don't. You've seen it at the federal level on the political. I mean, do they take into consideration marketing of policies and wording and everything? And I mean, I guess propaganda.
Yeah.
Hey, there's an important point I wanted to make sure you guys address before we move on too far. What Vance said, as the dollar loses its reserve status, right now I think the dollar is sitting at 58%, 56% reserve status, and it's been going down for the last 20 years. Like, forget recent events. It was 75% reserve status maybe at the turn of the millennia. That leaves room for, as you said, other currencies, and it doesn't necessarily need to be other cryptocurrencies. My question is, as we go through this deglobalization of foreign exchange, how long does it take for another potential chief reserve asset to rise up? Because and if you look at long-term centuries old charts, you'll see the Netherlands, France, Great Britain's pound being the world reserve currency, and they all seem to last 80 to 125 years. The dollar is coming up on about 100 years reserve status since probably, if you want to put it around like World War I. My question is, there looks to be a deglobalization where BRICS has their little fief. The dollar has its fief. The euro is going to do what it does. In this whole mix-up, one will certainly rise to the top. How long does that take, Vance?
Yeah. No, that's a good question, Ulrich. And I wish I knew because that will be a great bet, right? Like, that's where you start putting your money. But I think, to your point, though, on looking at the history, you also have to understand why certain countries lost their reserve currency, lost their global power, even looking back at Rome. I mean, you're talking about 1,000 years, basically, whenever they were in power and had their dominance. What did they start doing more of? They started looking more internally. they started cutting off themselves from the rest of the globe and things of that nature. And I think that's something that the populist right and many on the left here in America are now starting to do more of. It is a concern for me. I'm also a free trade guy. Look, I think China has problems that we need to address, but I don't think you do that through tariffs. I think we should have more free trade with our allies, and then that will put more pressure on China to change than the tariffs will, because ultimately they don't care about their people. They're a communist country that is not being elected, right? And so I think that creates some issues there. And so when you look at the BRICS, they're having a lot of troubles too. Right? And so how are they going to lead the way for the new currency? I don't see that happening. Is it backed by oil or gold? And I'm not a huge like gold standard guy either. I think that there are problems with gold standard as well, because then the government can manipulate the price of gold and the regulations that are on gold. And so there are some other issues. That's why I usually come back from a free banking system, which I think should be contributed to by cryptos, Bitcoin being the main one, right? And things of that nature. And to Andy's point, I don't know which other one there would be. That's the main one that I think about, but I just say in general. But I don't know if I have a great answer for you, Ulrich. I mean, I think that these are all considerations, what we need to be looking at right now, that unfortunately I feel like we are, they say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now it's definitely rhyming because we're making a lot of mistakes that we have in the past right now of too much government spending, too much debt, too much money printing, all this stuff, cutting off from the rest of the globe, trade. I think those are all leading to, if it's not turned around quickly, a tipping point where we will have a major disaster on our hands if we're not there already, to be honest.
Yeah, and it cannot be turned around. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's a Ponzi scheme. And the answer I would say is slowly but slowly then suddenly.
Yeah.
I mean, the U.S. dollar was gained its power, became reserve currency after World War II, and that was after 2 world wars where Europe basically destroyed itself. But it was so much destruction in World War II that they couldn't that they gladly gave the reserve status to the United States. And I think we're in the amidst of a financial destruction right now that's going to rapidly give it over to Bitcoin. And it would not surprise me if it happens within the next few years, because the next step is going to be the Fed and all the banks. Look, we've already seen the Chinese, I think, were cutting their rates. Brazil was cutting their rates. These are the vaunted BRICS. And eventually the Fed will do it too, and that will launch hyperinflation. And so you could see it, within a very short amount of time that we're having this crazy discussion about what's next when we all know what's next. Bitcoin is the first time there's ever been an option that will work for a long period of time, as opposed to someone else powerful taking over from the last power. This will be the people taking over, and there'll be a great role for government, except it'll be doing productive things, not sucking life out of people.
Well, I think cutting rates is next. Definitely, they will cut rates sooner than people expect. I think, and I think they can live off of that. I don't think it'll bring about hyperinflation.
Think about the debt, and Vance can give us some more perfect numbers about it. I mean, this 33 trillion of debt, and don't forget all the off-balance sheet stuff. That's all financed at low duration interest rate. It's going to have to be refinanced now. So there's no way they could pay it unless they cut rates.
I think the CBDC will be involved in some. And speaking of the CBDC, I think the United States, again, which will help the dollar, is that all the major countries will have their central bank digital currencies. The people in the smaller countries will now have an easy digital way to get into these currencies. They'll forget about their hyperinflated currencies. It will cause all sorts of chaos in these smaller countries, but I think it will empower some of the larger countries. So one thing I forgot to ask, in the White House, did you ever hear any CBDC talk, central bank digital currency talk?
Not really. Not at that time.
Do you believe that they are going in that direction, the current administration?
I think so. I mean, I think that there is the Fed has already talked about it quite a bit. And I think from the Biden administration, they're looking at it. They want to centralize power as much as possible. I mean, I think that's where you have this central government global government, if you will, creating global tax policy. And I mean, it's going to end up being global fiscal policy, which means also global currency policy. So all these things are starting to line up, whether you look at IMF or others. There is a push to do just this. And I think here recently there was talk about these tax havens where countries have lower taxes, that people are parking their money there instead. And they're saying, look, we need to get rid of that. We need to make sure that there is a global minimum tax or something along those lines, and to make sure that we get around that. And so I can see this administration, the Fed, they're going to continue to push for CBDC, which I think is a terrible idea, to have a central bank digital currency. Look how much they've ruined the dollar. Why would we give them access to something else like this?
Yeah, well, interesting take on this. Before we move on from the potential pending financial disaster, anyone else have anything else to say, real quick? Because I want to go. We're talking about.
I'll just add, Adam. You know my view. I said it last time. I don't believe there'll ever be CBDCs because any attempt to create them would cause total financial disaster, like Atlas Shrugged at the very end. There's no way to do it without causing a destruction, because the supply side would collapse and be total loss of confidence in everything. And things like Bitcoin would go to like $1 zillion, and that would draw all the attention of all the big money.
Well, I mean, again, let's talk about the propaganda. 2 + 2 = 5. If they're told that Bitcoin is for terrorists, keep on the dollar is for.
No, but I'm talking about. Look what happened. Look what happened. We were talking about this during the pandemic. That short amount of time where supply chains broke down because they couldn't physically work. Well, that's exactly what would happen if they tried to institute some kind of fake currency. Businesses wouldn't work anymore. They wouldn't want the currency, and they would go on strike, and everything would fall apart. Well, you have to have money to fund a CBDC. You can't just say, I'm going to do it. They're already broke, and it would cause inflation just announcing that they're going to do it. So I just don't think any of those will ever work. I think we'll never get that far.
Well, I think we might see. We might. I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see the attempt.
They'll attempt it. They'll attempt it.
All right. Well, Ulrich, any comments before we move on to Argentina here, real quick? Because we're talking about international. We're talking about BRICS. We're talking. The BRICS are the countries that are always on the verge of becoming huge. Brazil, India. China actually has become huge, but the next generation. Well, Argentina is one of the past, but then one of the future, and blah blah blah. Well, anyway, Argentina is legendary for every 10 years they have hyperinflation or something like that. Well, they just had an election, and they need another election because no one won the majority, but no one won over 50%. This guy named Javier Milei. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I had heard of him beforehand. He had a popular little clip on Twitter where he's talking about how great that fiat is a scam, and that he liked Bitcoin. He's a libertarian. He really is a libertarian. He's in the Argentine parliament right now, I believe, and he won. And usually they love to elect leftists like Cristina Fernandez and her relatives and her husband and her son. I mean, it's unbelievable some of the things that go on down there. But this guy is totally the opposite. And they're calling him all the names they called, in that original when I introduced Dr. Vance Ginn, the Texas Observer called him all these, radical, this, that. They're calling Javier Milei the same things. He's promoting a competition of currencies, permitting citizens to choose their monetary system freely, or the dollarization of the economy, as well as unifying the exchange rate by freeing it immediately from all capital controls. I mean, if this guy really does this, if this guy lets people, pick Bitcoin, pick the dollars, that they just forget about, the Argentine, stop printing the Argentine peso to oblivion. That's the end game every single time. If he does, he's going to serve because Argentina was a very wealthy country. I mean, in terms of natural resources, it's very wealthy. Very, very, it could be. Around 1900, it was one of the most wealthiest countries on the planet. It's a tremendous country. If they were to go even do, just talk positively about Bitcoin, if he's really a libertarian, it'll be a much bigger story. than El Salvador. And I don't know. I mean, what will it mean for El Salvador? What will it mean for the United States? What will it mean for other countries? What will it mean for Bitcoin? What do you think about this, Ulrich?
Well, I mean, if you Google search anything about Javier Milei, I mean, he's hated by anything from a traditional news query. He's considered a danger to society because he opposes what? Central banking, feminism, the LGBT movement, global warming policy, sex education in public schools, I think in general as well. He doesn't like any of it. So he's essentially a minarchist, which I kind of find myself in, where you believe that everything in society except for generally police, courts, and military should be privatized. And I mean, is this revolutionary thinking? Yeah. Is this an extremist? Yeah. And is Argentina in need of a revolution or extreme change? Yeah. They've gone through. I was looking at the numbers. Where are my numbers? It says that they have 25% inflation in 2017 and spiking in the going on the path of 100% inflation year over year this year. So in my opinion, like, I think the people are saying enough is enough. Like, the socialism isn't working. I know it's like the warm, cuddly politics. It's not working, and it's showing itself. It's showing rearing its ugly head in Argentina year after year. Is he going to make Bitcoin legal tender like El Salvador? I don't care. And I've always been that style. The best present for Bitcoin is one that gets the hell out of the way. Presidents and politicians that believe that they can enact laws to support or to limit Bitcoin. Oh, are they going to regulate Bitcoin? That's a favorite normie question. Okay, how? What does regulate mean? They don't even know. They just hear that buzzword in the news, and then all of a sudden it scares people away from it. So I do think that he'll probably do something like El Salvador, where he'll bring dollarization to Argentina and allow Bitcoin as a free in the country as a free market of monies, and may the best money win.
Well, again, he's still going to win in October, but I also think there could be a domino effect of sorts that could inspire some other nations to do some pro-Bitcoin type of things. I do hope that, but I am amazed that he, in the United States, we have a libertarian party that kind of talks this guy's game, sort of, and they're so minimized. I mean, but so I imagine a guy like this becoming president of the United States. So that what do you think about that, Dr. Vance Ginn there?
Yeah.
If something like this were to happen in the United States, would this make it even increase the likelihood of something like this even happening if this happens to a pretty legitimate country like Argentina?
I hope so. I think, given the state of the state of our economy, the state of just society in general, there's so much tension that's going on in America that this could happen here soon. When I was looking at the New York Times, their article a couple of days ago said far-right libertarian wins Argentina's presidential primary. Javier Milei, who wants to abolish the central bank, yes, and adopt the U.S. dollar as Argentina's currency, is now the front runner in the fall general election. And as Ulrich was talking about that, you think about what's happening there. It says the peso has plummeted in value. Annual inflation has surpassed 115%. Nearly 40% of the population, 4 out of 10, is impoverished. And the country is struggling to repay its $44 billion debt to the IMF. I mean, these are major problems that we are finding a lot of that here in America, here in the U.S. And so I think when you start seeing the tension, the uncertainty about the future, that it is driving more people to talk about, ending the Fed. I was just at an event last week with Young Americans for Liberty. I emceed their event, a great group there. And you had Ron Paul talk. You had Senator Rand Paul. You had Vivek Ramaswamy was there, and all of them were talking about, ending the Fed and things of that nature. And so I think when you start to see the tension and the generation Z and everybody else, they're like, hey, look, the system is working against us. And it is. Inflation is hurting them. Inflation and all this money creation has made it to where housing prices are unaffordable. for a lot of the younger folks that are out there. I was born in '81, so I'm right at the end of the millennial generation. But the younger millennials, it's very difficult for even them to be able to buy a home right now. And so when you start having that sort of groundswell, you start to see the dynamics change. And I'm hopeful that will lead to more libertarian, more classical liberal. That's what I consider myself, classical liberal ideas to come about. Because if not, we will end up like Argentina. we will be there very soon because we have, 1 out of every 5 is in poverty in the U.S., and I think when you think about these sort of situations and the debt that's over 130% of GDP and things of that nature, we've got some major problems that we've really got to turn around quickly or we will be in the same situation.
You mentioned Vivek. He's a Bitcoin fan also. After hearing him speak, and I've heard him speak at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, do you think if he became president, he would actually implement these financial so-called radical policies that he has spoken about quite confidently?
It's good that he's at least talking about it, and I'm hopeful that he puts the right people in place that will make those changes. That's one thing I did find out, going back to the White House. The president has a lot of power and there's a lot of things they could change and talk about, but really it's about who they have in those positions. You may agree or disagree with Trump in general, but I think there were a lot of good people in a lot of places across the government. Maybe there could have been better in certain places for sure, but I think that let's see who he puts in place by hopefully replacing Jerome Powell. And who FTC I think will be important. Who's going to be there? SEC. I mean, all of these types of entities are going to be really important for whoever is going to be the next president. And I think so far, Vivek would be the best positioned to try to lead in this direction, given that he's kind of an outsider and given how much that he's talking about these different issues.
Did you get to speak to him one-on-one by any chance?
I did, yeah.
Uh-oh, Adam's frozen.
He froze.
I'll
okay.
keep going, but yeah, I did speak to Vivek and we had a good discussion.
Sorry.
He's back. Uh-oh. It shows red.
Yeah, go ahead and finish your statement, then we'll go to Andy.
Okay. Yeah. No, I did talk to Vivek some, and we had a good discussion. He's a lively guy. He's really good to talk to and everything else. I think, he's got good opportunity right now to continue to message these things. We'll see what happens during the primaries and everything else. But I'm glad he's there to shake things up.
All right, I am here. I just had a little bit of an issue here. Also, one final question about Vivek. I mean, this is off the cuff type of stuff here. Knowing what you know about, well, I don't know if you know anybody that's left in the Trump administration. If he happened to win again, do you think they would try to incorporate Vivek in some position in the Trump administration?
Yes, I think so. I think they will. And one thing I would just for our knowledge is I learned this recently, just last week. It's Vivek. So apparently he doesn't like cake, right? Vivek, cake. Yeah. So that's how you pronounce his name. But yeah, no, I think he would, be someone in the Trump administration if that was to happen. I would really like to be some other changes that are going on. I don't like all these indictments and everything else that's happening right now. And, I'm cautious about that. But I think we need a different direction. And I think that Trump has a lot of qualities that are good about, putting people to the fire, the art of the deal. Look, I mean, we're going to negotiate as far, but I think there are some things that are kind of missing there. Whenever you think about trade, when you think about currencies and things of that nature, we need a little bit different direction from my perspective. And so we'll see what happens. But I would like to see someone with a little more classical liberalism really come out.
Well, then I want to go back to federalism real quick.
Yeah.
There's been one person in the race that has demonstrated a classic federalism.
Adam, could I give my view on the Argentinian?
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I'll say I think I've made it pretty clear. I think Nayib Bukele is the greatest politician of our time, and I think El Salvador is, in the early stages of being the greatest story of our lifetime, to see a country that small and that impoverished, and that was a complete basket case, rising to power. And it really is. They're in the early stages of becoming a major economic power and maybe a major social power, like where they are trendsetters. He's shown the way of taking a country on a Bitcoin standard, and it's been successful. And as far as these other elections, look, I mean, look, they're not going to make the dollar the currency of Argentina. That's not going to help any. And the BRICS are all basket cases. There's nothing good about any of those countries. And there's not going to be any coordination. There's not going to be any basing currencies on anything. They all have to make decisions for themselves. And they're all going to, one at a time, you're going to see people like this guy in Argentina start to win votes. I mean, it started with people like Marine Le Pen. It started with people like Trump, people who were not supposed to win and were not mainstream. And it's going to be more and more like that. I believe this guy probably will win in Argentina. And I think you'll see, like you said, the domino effect. There'll be more of those. And some of these guys, because, Vance, I don't believe Trump or Biden will be elected by the time we get to next year's election. I don't even know who it'll be, but I'll bet you it's someone who's got views that like what we're talking about here. Hopefully someone like Robert Kennedy's views, where he says, yeah, Bitcoin is great, we should own it. So we'll see.
I agree with you on the BRICS will not be able to coordinate it at all. But again, dollarizing is better than hyperinflating the peso, because
good stopgap for now.
It's like the stable coins, like Tether and USDC. Where are they used? They're used in South America. They're used in the islands, Central America. Is it? I just wrote an email to a coworker, like my cousin's getting his stable coins. Look, if you're in America, it's just as just as much of a scam as the dollar. But for people like, we're looking at the Argentinian peso, 80%, 90%, 100%, it's a no-brainer. Like, the dollar is the best fiat currency, and it, like Andy says, a stopgap.
Well, I want to say about the El Salvador president real quick. I don't want to pedestal this guy at all, because and I've warned Bitcoiners about this. Saying that he's the best politician of all time. I mean, I think it's hyperbole there a little bit. You're putting yourself in a really bad position.
Of our time, not all time.
If there's a coup,
yeah.
or if something happens, it's all gone in 2 seconds. It really is, and it's just not. It doesn't have the history of relative cultural stability that a country like Argentina has compared to it. It's a bit different. A Central American small little country compared to gigantic Argentina, compared to gigantic.
Has Argentina been a stable country?
It hasn't been wild. It hasn't been wild coups like that. It's a European. I've been there before. It's like
if there can be some stability. If there can be some stability in El Salvador, we do know that the countries with the highest per capita income, Singapore, Taiwan, Luxembourg, these smaller republics have shown great prosperity, because it's a reference to smaller government wins out. These big governments, they're hard to control. They want to control more. They get stars in their eyes. They want to conquer the world. Small governments, they know what they can do, and they do it right. And so I think that El Salvador could potentially be the Singapore of the West.
There you go.
In the future.
I've been to Singapore before also, and what they are, the points you bring up about it, how they maintain control is, it is small. It is a small population, so it's similar in population, but they control it in a semi-dictatorship type of thing.
That's both countries,
and so. That's a way to control a small country, kind of like a king or whatever. But if the guy is tweeting on the toilet that he's buying Bitcoin, is that the king that you want? Where is that going to lead, as opposed to the guys in Singapore who are focused, high IQ individuals with no feeling or emotion at all? We're comparing different type of situations here, and where there's not going to be a coup, but you will be killed. I mean, he's gone military over there a little bit. I mean, it's nice that he's gotten rid of the criminals, but is he taking it too far? I don't know. Again, that's why I like the Argentine possible experiment as a contrast.
Adam, we just had a coup in Russia, right? We're pretty much having them here with all these indictments of our presidents. I mean, Brazil is a complete mess. India, is
But that's
run
not
by
a
a
real coup. I'm
dictator.
not talking about a real
China, the guy
coup.
took
It's
over
over.
G,
If
and he's
What coup
there's
was
a
in
holding on
Russia?
real
forever.
coup, if
So,
there's a
That was a
real
fake.
coup,
That was an act.
a-
Wagner was
yeah.
playing games.
I mean, a real coup is just, it's over. What
Why are
was
we talking about a
before is no
coup? There
more.
is no coup. What are I mean,
I'm saying there
he
could
doesn't
be.
make him a bad political leader. Yeah, you could have a coup, but there's no coup.
I'm saying there's a
He's
threat
doing great.
in that country. Of all the countries you just mentioned, the biggest threat of a coup is in El Salvador. It is. It just, that's the way. That's their history. That's the way it is. It's just, I just don't want people. I like that there's this Argentine.
Don't put El Salvador on a pedestal.
Oh, yeah, don't put it. I think people are in. I don't want people to be let down. I don't want, if there ends up being a coup there, I don't want the Bitcoin price is going to crash the next day. Sadly, I mean,
They're going to blame the coup on Bitcoin. Look what happens. You put Bitcoin
exactly.
in, you're gonna lose your government, and it's going to be all chaos. Yeah. So we want to be humble about El Salvador, but at the same time be hopeful.
Bitcoin doesn't need El Salvador, and
No,
the
they
Bitcoin
don't.
price would not crash if there was a coup in El Salvador. It would
A lot
suck
of
in El
people
Salvador, but
people need their state. People
and
need their
who's
state.
going
That's
to
the
be
problem.
doing the coup? Like who exactly is? He has like a 90% approval rating. So who exactly
I know that's. I mean, so does the
is
North
so
Korean
angry
leader.
that they want to take
I
over?
don't believe this statistic. North Korean leaders 99, 100%.
Well,
I
there's
mean,
no coups in North Korea.
It's a history.
So
There's a history there. Again, we're putting them on a pedestal because they did something good. The Central African Republic went all Bitcoin, then they didn't. I mean,
did
these
not
are
go all
whimsical
Bitcoin.
people. These are
They did not go all
whimsical.
Bitcoin.
They're whimsical. You know, it's not the focus that I think some people think there might be there. I think it's become kind of like a sideshow with Max Kaiser also down there. I mean, anyway, we've gone off on a tangent.
I will say, Vance, this is an
It's
example. If you want to do a basket of cryptocurrencies, look at Central Africa and look at the Central African Republic, and that's your example. You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Stick with Bitcoin. I'm sorry.
Gotcha.
All right. Real quick, Vance Ginn, you had a tweet that I really liked. You talked about the Google antitrust case. I think the government is still going after Google, although they can't go as much as. I mean, this is populism gone wild. You talked about private property and capitalism. That is the foundation of capitalism. Populism is anger and envy to a point where you can. It makes it right to confiscate property, and that's what I feel antitrust law is all about. Getting the people excited to a point and scapegoating where it's okay to confiscate a corporation's a private property because you classify them as so-called monopoly, even though they're real competitors. So this continues. So I want to know if you had anything else to say about that.
No, that's right, Adam. And for the audience, I'd like to go check out on Pelican Institute, so pelicanpolicy.org. I wrote this paper, Antitrust and Enforcement, Letting Markets Work Without Empowering Government. It was with Ted Belima. We wrote this paper and talked a lot about these types of issues where really we need to stick to the consumer welfare standard. FTC, the DOJ, Lena Khan, and others are trying to move us off of that because they want their intended objectives met, their subjective decisions made to break up these companies instead of letting markets work. I mean, like I said earlier, I think the monopolies are really by government, not by the private market. As long as there is competition and there's not major barriers to entry, which are caused by government, then you have competition that's allowed throughout the marketplace. And so I don't have any issue with Google, Amazon and others because there's a huge demand for their products. And if there's not, then stop using them. Don't make it to where government comes in and creates a quote unquote bad situation and makes it worse. Many people talk about market failures, right? And they'll go through all this list of reasons why there's market failures. And I think that's a bunch of crap. Really what there is are government failures. What you have is government situations that make the market look like it's failing, but really it's government created problems along the way. And so what I would like to see is more private property rights, more opportunity for these businesses to profit and expand and do what they're going to do and fail. the more that the government comes in and breaks these companies up and doing other things, the less failure there's going to be. And it's actually going to make more monopolies, quote unquote, more monopolies, stronger businesses in the process. And that's also the history, kind of going back to your point about, El Salvador and other types of countries' history. That's also what we've seen with antitrust history. And so I don't think we want to get into this aspect of getting away from the precedent that's already been set by the consumer welfare standard and moving in a different direction if we're going to have antitrust law at all, which I think could be debated and should be. But if we are, let's at least have something that's more objective of a metric than the subjective determinations of mergers and acquisitions and everything else that these folks, I mean, they're really radicals. If you want to talk about radicals, they are big government radicals that are trying to ruin our economy and our profitability sort of mechanisms that allow for us to flourish and to let people prosper along the way.
I think Ayn Rand said this: the antitrust laws were the worst laws possible. I don't think they should exist at all. And I just want people out there. I know people are angry at Google and Facebook and all these things. It is a way for the government to confiscate property. If you allow this, they're going to come after you in some way to confiscate your property, not through monopolies, but if it's through some other weird thing. It will hurt us all in the long run if we compromise our basic principles of private property. This is mine, this is yours, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we're running toward the end of the show here real quick. Andy, any thoughts on the antitrust and Google?
Well, not so much on Google, but I will say this was really cool to have Vance on the show here because he's an insider of sorts, and he's also very young. And he's in the Bitcoin realm. So let me tell you, Vance, you have a real opportunity for a great career. I mean, hopefully you'll start it out by investing personally to make yourself wealthy enough to do the things you need to do. But you're fighting all these tilting all these windmills, and I think you see from the inside that these things don't work. And that's why you're here on a Bitcoin show, because you get it. So I wish you the best of luck in what you do in the future. And the more time you spend incorporating Bitcoin into it, the more success you're going to have, both personally and professionally.
Explore it a little more, because there's so much crossover from what you talk about into what we talk about, and that's why I had you here today. And
let me ask you this, guys. I've read some books on Bitcoin and others. What do y'all usually recommend as being the best place to go for some of these resources? Is there one?
I'll chime in. I'd say the best place you want to go is crazy.
Twitter.
Spend some time on Bitcoin Twitter. That's right.
Okay.
I was absolutely going to say that. Their books are static.
Yeah.
Good to see the dynamic conversation in real life, but you have to follow the right people, because there are people who are playing both sides of the fence when it comes to Bitcoin and other things. There are people who shift their perspective, where they were Bitcoiners, but somehow they got wrecked by a bear market. I call it bear market derangement syndrome. And now they start talking about other things. People who stay true to their principles that were Bitcoin only or Bitcoin initially. Maybe they wrote a book. Follow those people. Reach out to them. Ask Adam about who to follow. Ask me. Ask Andy. We have some people for you.
Well, because Saifedean's book, basically, I read it, or audio booked it. It does boil down to separation of money and state. So I mean, that's a good crossover right there. Saifedean, I can't pronounce his name.
I mean, Saifedean's book is like, it's like reading Atlas Shrugged. It's the same stuff. Vance understands all this stuff. He's just in the government world of I get it, but this is my job, is to fix what we have and make it best. But, at some point, I think you're realizing that you can't fix it.
Yeah.
And, who do you follow? Look, I learned early on from people like Antonopoulos. I learned from people like Adam. But eventually you're just going to come to you're on Twitter, and you see incremental news, you process it. Look, there's only 21 million that are ever going to exist. There's 19 million now, probably 5 million are lost forever. We're going to have a halving. The hash rate hit a new all-time high today. It's going up parabolically. It'll keep going up parabolically. and you're going to just keep seeing inflation and political dysfunction everywhere, and more people will buy it. But as far as learning, I think you know all you need to know about it.
Yeah.
You just need to, like Ulrich says, you go on Twitter and you follow just a handful of smart people, and you'll get all the cross tweets and stuff. You'll see the intelligent stuff, and you'll know as
It's the
much as we do.
integration. It's
Yep.
the
Yeah.
integration
Yep.
of Bitcoin theory with Bitcoin in real time in the real world.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
and then your unique thing that you can do is just invite them on your show. Invite us.
Yeah.
They're very friendly. They love being on shows. So get some of these guys. Just see who I follow. I follow some hardcore guys and everything. I retweet some hardcore guys. So yeah, just invite them on your show.
Oh, you have a show, Vance?
Yeah. Let People Prosper show.
Yes. He's got a great.
It's on YouTube and everything else, and I have a Substack.
VanceGinn.substack.com.
Hey,
I'll go on your show.
Okay. All right, cool.
And we could definitely talk about people who could make your show high profile. Believe me, if you want to make your show Bitcoin friendly, you start out with people like Adam. There are people like, let's say like a Dylan LeClaire, right? If you got him as a guest, and I'm sure he'd be happy to be there, everyone would know about you in a hurry in the Bitcoin community, and you would quickly, and he's just one guy. He's a young guy like you, probably younger than you. But, guys like that, everyone in Bitcoin will know you, and you will learn everything about Bitcoin in 2 seconds.
Nice. Okay, good.
We're talking about our projects here. Let's just go real quick what we're doing, and then we'll get out of here. So, Ulrich, talk about what you're doing. Then Andy, then we'll close with Dr. Vance Ginn.
Yeah, sure. Again, my name is Ulrich Patillo. I have a few projects that I've worked on or am working on. Chief one that I'm working on right now is called The Belt of Truth, which is a Substack that essentially intersects Christian ethics with Bitcoin ethics and hard money, libertarian economics, and finding where those types of freedom tenets are in the Bible and how the Bible can apply to a Bitcoiner's life. Essentially, also I've written probably I would say 16 published articles on various platforms, whether it's Swan Blog, one's coming out this week, Pleb Underground Represent, having another one out coming this week. So I'm an essayist, and I like to write from an ethical standpoint and applying real estate, sports, many different things, and how different microeconomies can be affected by Bitcoin. And additionally, the Declaration of Monetary Independence, which I make in a physical form to go to conferences where people can sign it. It's sort of a graffiti-like way, take pictures. It's a totem, but it's actually written like the Declaration of Independence, talking about what's bad about fiat money and what's good about Bitcoin. Thank you for having me on the show, Adam.
All right, Andy.
Well, I'm not working on anything, but I'm working on getting Vance to be mainstream. And because I think he has a real future. I love being on your show as always. It's great to see you again, Ulrich. And hopefully I'll see you all again soon.
This is what I love, getting people together in motion, connecting people who might have not been connected. But I love it. You're witnessing. Okay, Dr. Vance Ginn, I've got your information linked to below, but tell the people what to do.
Yeah. No, this has really been a great discussion. I really appreciate the thoughts from Ulrich and Andy and yourself, Adam. We got to keep this going. I love to be back on and kind of bounce off some more ideas as we go through this, because there's a lot to do. Yeah, you are exactly right. We need to find some new paths, because the path right now is leading to destruction. And ultimately, what my God-given calling, what I believe is my God-given calling, is to let people prosper. And I think that's done by getting government out of the way, by allowing for people to live however they're going to live. And prosperity doesn't just mean material things. It means spirituality. It means religion. It means psychology, psychologically, socially, whatever that's going to be for you. That's really what should it be. I'm a Christian classical liberal, and this is what I do. I've got 3 kids. I live in Round Rock, Texas, but I'm just trying to make this world a better place. You know what I mean? And so I do that through a podcast called Let People Prosper. You can also check my website out at VanceGinn.com. I'm an academic too. I still do research and dive deep into stuff where I publish academic papers and journals and everything, and also deal with a lot of public policy folks and legislators and, key folks that are out there and trying to advise them. That's why I formed this Ginn Economic Consulting to advise them on the best path forward as well, to where, look, we need tax reforms, we need spending restraints and things of that nature. And ultimately money is going to be a big part of that, and no matter what. And so we've got a lot to do, but really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today. And I look forward to other things in the future, maybe having y'all on my show and talking about that as well.
Well, this is the thing I wanted to create. This show of mine, I used to do this every single day, then every single week, just this show. And now it's made a comeback here. And what I wanted to do is have a regular panel. So I love these guys have been the regulars. Now you say you'd like to return. So maybe we've got our regular panel here, people. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Is this the regular panel that you want? I think we got a diverse group. 2 Christian guys, 2 Jewish guys. The guy in Texas, California.
The
Colorado.
Old and New Testament. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right.
We've got all sorts of different forms of diversity here. It's very interesting. Maybe I hit the nail on the head today, dude. You got to be in motion. You got to keep on trying. I want to thank you guys for a unique beast of a show. Pound that like button, everybody. Who knows? You might get the same panel back next week in 2 weeks. Who knows? But you can tell I'm very excited. So it's Wednesday, but Shabbat Shalom on Friday and Saturday. And again, I'm Adam Meister, the BitcoinMeister, the Disrupt Meister. Follow me on Twitter. I'm going to retweet all these guys. Follow all of them. And keep on spreading the Bitcoin word. Thanks a lot again, guest. We'll talk after I push end stream. Bye-bye. Ending stream. Okay, it ended. And